Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this miserable, wet, windy Sunday in January, the last weekend of January. I'll wait for a few more people to join. If they join, if not, that's fine. I will. It'll be a very quick live. Hey, you. Oh, I keep knocking the microphone, so I apologise if it bashes in your ear. See if anyone else comes. Okay, so I've had a bit of a backlash about this, about the question, which I get. I do understand. Hi Maria. People are saying, well, duh, yeah, they are biased. What a stupid question. And I get that. I understand. But I still think it's important that we talk about it, because actually what happens... Hi Sarah and Anushka. Hi Dawn. I don't think Anushka can see Dawn, so I'll say hello to her for you. So yeah, a lot of people, when I posted that this was going to be the topic of my live this week, good evening, hiya, they assumed that I was talking about gender bias. And that's interesting, and that's perfectly valid. And perhaps I should have thought a little bit more about the title, but I wanted to talk about bias within family court and parental alienation. So I went for it. Controversial, like I said, had quite a bit of backlash, but you know what? I'll take it. I'm a big girl. I can deal with it, and people are entitled to their opinion. I wish that rather than just criticising, they'd come and find out what it was really about. But you know what? That's fine if they don't want to. I'm not going to force anyone. So, bias in the family courts. Yeah, it does seem obvious. And if ever you've been through the family court system, you'd certainly feel like you've been in a one-way battle, essentially. Everything you said was put to one side and the other person could do no wrong. That's how it feels to people who have been in that experience. And a lot of people will say it's because I'm male, or equally, I work with women who say it's because I'm female. So this is what is so interesting, that actually gender bias, it does depend what gender you're in. Women will say there's gender bias towards women. Men will say there's gender bias towards men. So what I want to do is actually go through the real biases that take place, of which gender is one of them. But actually there's other things going on as well. And the reason for doing this is because by understanding other forces at play, it can help you in your case. It can help you with your understanding. It can remove that personal feeling of, but they just didn't like me. Stats of what, Johnny? What? I'm not sure what stats you... criminal justice system, so against the victims. Well, family court isn't in the criminal justice, so that's not really what we're talking about. There is a big thing, male, female, what? How many men there are, how many women there are, who gets custody? No, I didn't say it was the same, Johnny. I didn't say it was the same. What I said was that women will say that courts are biased against them. Men will say that courts are biased against them. So actually, gender bias it's your own perspective of it. So what I want to go through is looking at some of them, some of the biases that are in play. And yes, gender will be one of them, but there are other things as well. And women will use the system. They will play on the female stereotype of being weak and helpless and all that, which I totally disagree with. It doesn't do anything for women. It doesn't do anything for men either. But equally, men will use a mental health thing for women. So I think the gender issue is interesting, but it's not the whole story. Hi everyone, I'm sorry for missed people say hello to. Hi Melanie, hi D-Mix. And I appreciate that a lot of you are going to feel as though your gender is the one that they're picking on, or the one that they're going against, or it's favoured in the opposite direction. But as you'll see from the comments, women feel like that and men feel like that. So it's not as simple as saying courts are in favour of women, courts are in favour of men, because it does depend on your perspective. Now, I do appreciate that if you went through all family courts and looked at who gets the most custody, yes, women will be granted higher custody. And I will bow down to that. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm very pro men. My situation was I was fighting for dad's rights because I totally disagree with the premise that being a woman means you're naturally the better parent. I think that being a good parent has nothing to do with what's between your legs. I think being a good parent is about how much you love them, how much you care for them, what you do for them. And actually, the cases that I work with around parental alienation, the alienating parent can be male or female. And their behaviours there's no particular gender that is more or less in either of them. But what you do find is that the alienator will tap in to our biases, our natural biases. So women, for example, will play on that victim mentality. They will play on that. And I've had rows with women on Twitter before who have blatantly just said, men are all abusers, women are victims. That doesn't help us as women. That doesn't help the feminist side, because actually we're quite strong. We're not all victims. But equally, obviously it doesn't help men. But men will also use the bias towards them as being the provider and the financial, and they will belittle the female by saying that they're crazy, they've got mental health problems. So I'm just trying to say that I don't want to get embroiled in a gender debate. I know that is important to a lot of you, but what the purpose of this live was to show you that actually there's a lot of other things that are going on. And just let me know if you think it's bull. Tell me. It's a live. I'm not going to be offended. I want to talk about everything, but I'm gonna discuss what's going on. So one of the first biases that takes place actually is the availability bias. And what do I mean by this? I mean that say your case is on Tuesday, and on Monday on the front page of, I don't know, whatever paper judges read, the financial, I don't know, the Times, the Guardian, whatever they read, is a big story about how unfair family court is, how they always give rights to women over men. That's going to play on that judge's mind. So when he goes into court and he's got a case where mum and dad are fighting for custody, his bias might naturally lean towards the man because he doesn't want to play into that bias. So do you see, equally it can work the other way? It could be that there's something about women in the paper and that could play in, or he could have had a case last week that is stuck in his head, and he kind of follows that same pattern. So we have a bias with what information is available to us. So press can come into it. The media, how that's portrayed, will play an interesting part. Narcissistic mothers, I'm just going to quickly read through everything. Sadly, with regards to men using alienation tactics against women, we don't have, there's no figures, because there's no figures officially on parental alienation because it's not recognised. So it's very difficult to actually have statistics. And it says, in my experience, I had the domestic violence agenda used against me. And then it is used, and that's what I'm saying. Women will use that stereotype, and that is one of the biases. But there are other things at play. How come when researching narcissism, parental, narcissistic is, do you know what it is? I think it's because, and this plays into our bias, is that we need an explanation for why mothers and narcissistic mothers treat their children so badly, because it goes against our innate beliefs about women. We've been taught from birth that women are naturally nurturing, caring. They're the ones that hug you and kiss you and make you feel better. But actually, so when it's a woman that does it, we have to understand, we have to think, we have to make an example of it. We have to think it's a one-off. So a lot is written about that. Whereas we tend to assume that men are going to be this way. They're going to be less loving. They're going to be less caring. And so their behaviours are kind of accepted. And that, again, that comes into play, and that works against men. Melanie says that the majority of domestic violence perpetrators are men. Okay, so yes, statistically, that is what we'll say. However, I would just add, male suicide is 3 times higher, and how many men actually report that they are being abused? So I'm not saying whether that's true or not. Yes, statistically, what is out there, that is true. But we don't know what is unreported. We don't know how many men don't. Like I said, my situation wasn't reported. Wouldn't even think about it because it was shameful. It's not what men do. They don't go and ask for help. They don't get abused. So I think that plays into it. So whilst I'm not disagreeing with you, Melanie, I know that is certainly what's in statistics. I think that the gap might be much smaller if everyone was reporting. Equally, not all women report, so I'm going to throw that out there as well. Does not the age and prior grooming by not parenting the relationship before the split matter too? What to gender bias, Carol? Age of grooming, no, that can start from the time that they are able to speak, essentially. Alienation starts long before the relationship has ended. And exactly, narcissists can be male or female. Yeah, and I think Melanie's just made a really good point there, that for many years courts were overly weighted in favour of mums, which was wrong, and now they're trying so hard to go back the other way that it's become, they're trying to equal it out and sometimes ignoring concerns. Now, I know from the guys that I work with that their issues were not taken seriously, and that wasn't the case for them. They were not treated as equal, essentially. They weren't treated as equal. And a lot of it is a postcode lottery. And as I go through the bias, some of these things will stick out. And like I said, the first one is the availability bias. So if the judge has just read a case where a judge was heavily criticised for being too lenient on a woman or too lenient on a man, he might swing completely the opposite way in your case because that's playing in his head. Okay? So that's one element. So the timing of your court case in terms of what's going on in the media, what's gone on in the court, all of those things can play in to how your case runs. It's not, we like to believe that or the court should essentially just be a fact-based process, but it's not. We've got all these things that are influencing the decision makers. Johnny, I think that's a really good point, actually, and I've heard that a lot, that when men report domestic violence, they're told that actually that's not relevant to a custody hearing, but when a woman reports domestic violence, they go for non-molestation orders, which are deemed relevant. So there is some difference, and I think one of the main differences is there's very little support for male abuse victims. So women will go, and they might go to what used to be Women's Aid. It's all different terms now. Whereas there's not really anywhere for a man to go. So a woman might have that support and know what to do in that process. A man wouldn't know. And that's all I have to say on that. So, okay, so I'm going to go on to the next one. It is very difficult, and it's lovely that you're all supporting one another, and I really hope that you keep doing that, because this isn't a battle. This isn't about pitting one of you against another. This is education. I want to help you to understand the whole process, and I 100%, I am pro dads as much as I am pro mums. I don't think parental alienation is a gender issue at all. It is still Women's Aid, but I know locally we call it something different, because they were trying to incorporate men, but they haven't done a great deal. So it is still Women's Aid. So the second one is the representativeness bias, which is making the stereotype. So this is how they use the gender issues. Yeah, you're right, Johnny. It is emotive, and we all feel hurt. We all feel pain, and it feels personal, because it is. It's our kids. It's our lives. But actually, it doesn't matter whether you're a mum or a dad. When your kids are taken away from you, that pain hurts the same. When you're cut, you'll bleed the same. It's that, and that's not about gender. And I know the title was controversial, but actually what I want to do is I want to help you see that there's other things at play, so that it's not about men versus women. I want to show you that actually that's one part of the puzzle, but there's so much more that's going on to try and help you. You're right, and I think this is the problem, and this is the problem I have, Top God. She says, how a female will use this to her advantage leaves a lot to be desired. And you're dead right, because to me, the way women behave in these circumstances, making false allegations, claiming child abuse, claiming rape, when it hasn't happened, that goes against all women, because by making false allegations, they're making it a million times harder for the real victims to come out, and they're using up services that cost so much money to fight a false claim, and all the money that goes into that, all the support that person has, and the next victim, it's taken it away from them. And I think it's disgusting that any human being would think that it's okay to make those lies just to meet their own needs, just to win a battle. And yeah, I think it's great that you brought that up. Okay, so the next one is the effect bias. So basically, it's that emotional, just exactly, it follows on beautifully from what you just said, which is the emotion of it. And unfortunately, this is what plays into sometimes plays into the gender bias, is that emotionally, we're probably filled with more pain at the thought of taking a child away from their mother than we are from taking away from a father. And again, that goes back to our history, but it's actually, that should be equal. We should feel the same sense of pain at the thought of taking a child away from either parent, regardless of their gender, regardless of they're a mother or a father. Taking a child away from their parent should not happen. It shouldn't happen. And so we need to take that out. We need to take our own emotions out in these situations. Judges need to be aware of that. Say, what if What if they grew up without a mother or father? That's going to tip into it. And Melanie quite rightly puts, it is a lottery. It is. Because it depends on the time that you go into court. Like I said, it might be that there's a big press coverage on something. That's going to influence. You've got the judges and the court staff's own personal feelings and experiences that are playing into this. They're trying to do it from a factual, but they're not. You can't. And this is why the one person making a decision doesn't seem right. I'm going to go slightly off tangent here, but there is a reason. How many of you watched World War Z? I'll give you a minute to put your hands up and say if you've seen it. And some of you probably know where I'm going with this. Anybody want to admit to watching World War Z? Okay. Yes. Good. Thank you. Yes. World War Z. Right. In when he goes to Israel, they built a wall, and that's how they kept zombies out. But he's talking to the guy because he can't understand how they knew to do this, and the politician says that what happened many years ago was they missed a lot of things. They believed that it wouldn't happen. They believed something wouldn't happen. They never believed the Holocaust would happen. They never believed it was. So they made judgments based on the fact they didn't think it would happen. So what they did is they employed a 12th man, essentially. So it's either 12th or 9th. But anyway, one extra person who, if all the others said it's not going to happen, this one person has to go with the fact that it might happen. So in the case of World War Z, everyone said zombies will never happen. So one guy had to go with a theory that it will happen and had to explore that. And then that's why they built the wall, because it did happen, and that's why they're protected. So in family court, getting back to my point, you will see it makes sense. In the family court system, what would be good is if we had a jury, essentially, of people who, if they all thought one way, they all believed mum or dad, one of them had to look at it from the other perspective and see how it changed. How does that change the case if actually everything dad is saying is right, or everything mum is saying is right, which is the opposite of what everyone else said? And that's kind of, in the training that I'm doing, that's kind of what I'm encouraging professionals to do, is to just reframe for half an hour. Just think, what if that person's right? That person who you don't believe, that person who you think is wrong and who is the abusive one and who the child should be removed from. What if actually they're right? Just look at the case through those eyes and just see how the evidence lines up that way. That's all we ask, is that you look at it from the opposite perspective. And I think that would be brilliant. I think that would be such an innovative way to approach the court. We have a jury within criminal, but we don't have anything like that within family. It's so secretive. And I know lots of people are going to start going on about the conspiracies and everything, and that I'm not saying whether I'm in on that or not. I don't want this to become the forum for talking about that, if that's okay. Yeah, Melanie raises a good point that actually if mum's breastfeeding, then that obviously will have an impact on contact, but that isn't to say that dad still can't have contact, because there's pumps. There are ways that we can help dad when if breastfeeding is happening. I know for me, I would do both. I would make sure that I was able to do the breastfeeding, but also it was in a bottle so dad could do it as well, so that they got that opportunity for bonding. That's just my own personal perspective. But the age of the child does play a part in this. But again, if you look at it from the flip side, what if other parent is a narcissist? What if mum is the narcissist and dad has left and is trying to protect? The quicker that we sort this out, then surely the impact on that child is going to be less. again, it's a difficult one, and there isn't a right or a wrong answer. This is what's so difficult, is that everything's on a case-by-case basis, and you have to look at it that if one, say mom is breastfeeding, but actually she's narcissistic and she's only breastfeeding because it looks good to her friends, or it's I don't know, there's some other reason for it, then what if she's using that then to keep dad away, to alienate? I'm just saying. I'm not saying that would happen. I'm just saying. No, men can't breastfeed, but they can bottle feed. And obviously, it's really difficult, and it is with breastfeeding. Like I just said, some women don't breastfeed. Some women who aren't narcissistic don't breastfeed and can't breastfeed, but women that do, some won't be doing it for the nurturing reasons that you would think. They might be doing it for other reasons. The narcissist thinks in very strange ways. A female narcissist would think that it's some, I don't know, a status symbol, for example. They could think it's a sexual thing. There's lots of strange things that narcissists think about, believe me. And so we can't take one behaviour and just say, well, because of that, then this must happen. There's other things at play in this. But yeah, and these are all things that need to be taken into consideration. So I'm going to look at the next one, which is the anchoring effect. So essentially, say you go to court and your guardian has written a damning report about you, and you don't know this, but the guardian and the judge actually are best mates. That report is going to carry more weight because the judge trusts their mate. Equally, you might have a guardian who's written a damning report, but the judge hates their guts. They've fallen out with them on loads of occasions in court. So it could go for you. These are other plays that the weight of someone's report will influence the decision within the court. So this is another area that we don't always think about. In small towns, I mean, let's face it, the UK is not big. We're not massive. Other than like your major cities, most courts, people are going to know one another. They're certainly going to have bumped into each other on the circuit. They're going to have been involved in cases together, and there are going to be some personal crossovers. There are going to be some headbutting, and that could or couldn't play in your favour. And you maybe don't know that. You wouldn't know that going into a case, that your guardian is the judge's best mate, or that actually they're not. They hate them. You don't know that, but it's something that could play into it as well. Where people are still talking about breastfeeding. No, and Melanie, you're right, that bottle isn't always a good idea, but equally, not all women can breastfeed. So I don't really want to go down the breastfeeding angle, because again, that's another grey area that we can get caught up on, because you've got women who can't breastfeed and will get upset about it. I agree, Johnny. I think that the secrecy around family court makes it very difficult for it to be a level playing field, because like I just said about the 12th man, if there was a jury style system within a family court where not just one person was making those decisions, but other people, and you were hearing a more balanced view, you got cross-examination, yeah, it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't make a nice experience, but it's not a great experience anyway, by the sounds of things. Not by the sounds of things, it isn't a great experience. It's not nice. No, it's not, Johnny. No, it's fine. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't save. But by having it so secret, these decisions are made, and there isn't that accountability. I was having a chat with a solicitor that I work with as well the other day about this, saying, because she said that these judges get it wrong, they're really messing up, and there's nothing they can do to hold them accountable. You have to hope that someone debars them, or they debar themselves. And that's the trouble, Andrew. You're dead right. The reason we have it secret is to protect the privacy of the children. But we're hearing time and time again that whilst their privacy is protected, their safety isn't. We could still have the same system. We could still have a jury style, or a 12th man, or just that. More than one person making the overall decision. We can still have that within a anonymous environment without anything being leaked to the press and things like that. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm just merely talking out loud. And like I said, the 12th man thing on World War Z really hit home, and I thought that's such a good idea, just to have that one person who reframes the entire case, who looks at it from a different perspective. Now, judges aren't the problem per se, because what you have is you have a number of people who make those who are involved in that decision making, and this is why they think that they've got it right, is because they rely on Kafka's reports, and then school or anyone else. But what you do find, and I have heard this on many occasions, that they don't always go with those things. Judges can still sometimes make their own decisions, and in sometimes that works for you, sometimes that goes against you. But it's the layers, isn't it? It is those layers of issues, and the bias is applicable at every single level. So you might have a social worker, and I spoke to a gentleman before who had a social worker who basically said to him at the start, "Why don't you just give up? Why don't you just give up? This is just the way it is. Women will win. Your wife will win." So he had that right from the off. He had that, and interesting enough, this case went crazy, but all of the professionals have those biases. Yes, we're all biased. I'm biased, you're biased, but it's being aware of that. And I delivered training on Saturday, and we went through them all, and we talked about what our biases were. And we can't get rid of them, because we've all been brought up in different environments. We all watch TV, we all watch films, we listen to the radio, we read papers. We're absorbing a lot of information from our environment all the time, which are going to influence our thoughts and our feelings about certain things. But what we can do is we can be aware that we have a bias. That's what we have to do. We have to be aware that we have these biases. And often you find that professionals are a bit haughty about that. They don't want to admit that. I know when I was training as a social worker, reflective practice was something we had to do. But once I started practicing, once I was out there doing it, we didn't have to reflect on our practice at all. Supervision was hardly ever happened because everyone was too busy. It was always be put off. So we never actually had chance to sit down and go, why did I make that decision? What was that based on? And I'm guessing that nothing's changed. If anything, it's probably got worse. So people aren't trying... You're right. Trying not to be biased, you end up being biased. But it's just being aware of it. It's not saying that I'm not going to be biased, but you're being aware that, okay, so I watched a film last night where mum was a psycho, and this woman who wears the exact same clothes as her, and she really reminds me of her, and so you're automatically attaching those. Do you see what I'm saying? Because I do that all the time. I'll see someone and they remind me of the narc, and I'm triggered. That person's done nothing wrong at all, but I'm triggered because of that bias, that memory. And I'm sure you have the same thing. We have it with music, and they trigger memories. But when you're actually making decisions about people's lives, you have to have reflection. And the solicitor was telling me that this is something new that they have brought in for the legal profession, is reflective practice. So that is good news. Rather than, like, I don't know if any of you know, but in most professions you have your continuous professional development. So you've got to keep a record of what training you've been to, what books you've read, how basically you've kept up to date. Solicitors didn't have that, but they've introduced this reflective practice and personal development element, so that they have to keep on top of things. They have to keep up to date with what's going on. And so that might be a good thing. We might start seeing professionals become or court professionals, legal professionals, become more understanding of why they've made certain decisions, and it might force them to take a closer look at what's going on. Yeah, children's is great, and that's exactly what I teach. It's exactly what I teach, but it's getting to that point, isn't it? And this is part of the problem that we have, is that we've got professionals who, I don't want to hear. They hate the term parental alienation. So part of my work is essentially trying to rebrand parental alienation into a professional friendly package that professionals will look at and go training on, and it will open their eyes. BBC impartiality, for example, must have one round earth person and flat earther. Well, yeah. It's like you said, we naturally have this. We're all individuals with our own personal experiences, but introducing reflective practice and encouraging professionals to be more reflective in their practice will hopefully make a difference. It will make more people look and think, why did I make that decision? Why did I make that judgment? Was there anything else going on and it may not affect, sorry, I get a real sore throat. It may not affect your case directly, but the changes might start coming now that that's been introduced into the legal profession. Just going to quickly, next one. So, and I've spoken about this many times before, that what happens in parental alienation cases is the narcissist has gone around smearing your name to any Tom, Dick or Harry that'll listen. They've told school, they've told doctor, they've told all their friends, they've told nursery, they've told anyone that you are abusive, aggressive, mental, whatever, whether you're a man or woman, you've had those words used against you to everyone around you. So when you go to court and professionals, they've already gained this idea, because nursery or school might have that impression. So say, for example, they've told nursery that you're mental, and one morning songs come on the radio as you're driving your little one into nursery, and it reminds you of a really sad time in your life, and you start to well up a little bit, and you're not feeling quite 100%, you're a little bit upset. So as you go to drop your little one off, you look upset. They're thinking, well, hang on a minute, Dad said they were mental, they do look a little bit. So they're looking for that confirmation, they're confirming that hypothesis. And this is what happens a lot in parental alienation cases, is that your perfectly natural behaviour, given the circumstances, your upset, your anger, your frustration, your confusion, can all make you look exactly like what the narcissist told everyone you are. And so it's so important for you to hold your emotions in check as much as possible, because otherwise you do end up just confirming that. And so when you go to when you go and have meetings with these people, and you're so animated that because you're angry that this has happened, angry that that has happened, and you're frustrated with the narcissist because they're not communicating with you, or they're being a pain in the backside over what they've done. Your natural reaction will make them think, they were a bit weird, weren't they? They were a bit off it. You're not. You're normal. You're natural. You're in a horrible situation, but they're not connecting that. They're just seeing you as a person, and they're judging you on that behaviour in that environment. It's wrong, but it's what happens. And I'm sure you've all heard that. I'm sure you've all had that yourselves, where you end up looking crazy because actually the narcissist is very good at making you be exactly what they say. We're trying, Mel. We are trying. We are working our way. We are setting up training for the people, for local judges in Lincoln and Lincolnshire. So I know that covers you. So we are doing that. That's something that's coming. Yeah, exactly. They do. They will say male narcissists will often say that the woman is mental, she's crazy, she's unstable. Women will say, female narcissists will say that he's violent, he's aggressive. So when you and your child are being used and abused by the narcissist, how are you going to act? Well, you're going to act a little bit crazy, you're going to act a little bit angry, you're going to act frustrated, but you're proving the hypothesis, because that's what the narcissist has done. They very cleverly played it all off, planted those seeds around, and so your reaction, your normal, natural reaction is, it's perfect. It's exactly what it should be, but they are viewing it in the wrong context. They are reviewing it as you being crazy, you actually being all the things that they said you were, and you're not. You're not. I'm not sure what's... Do you mean complex post-traumatic stress disorder? Yeah, I'm sure. And we do, yeah, you do experience that. You're on edge. You are a little bit hyper. You're a little bit... You can't settle, you can't relax, you're on edge all the time because that's the environment that you've been living in. You've been living in a walking on eggshells environment. And so, yeah, that's how you react. And so professionals think that you are all those things. So that bias then plays into their reports. They will report. One other thing that we found as well is that, and this is terrible, this shouldn't happen, but it does. Say how can I do this? I'm very, very conscious of not using gender, so I'm going to say what parent X states that parent Y shouted at them and pushed them against a wall. So they say to Kafkas, parent Y pushed me against the shouted at me and pushed me against the wall. Reporter writes, parent Y pushed them. The way they've reported it as if it's a statement of fact. Not parent X reports that parent Y did this. They report parent Y did this. So what they've done is they've taken someone's statement and made it a fact, because it's then in a legal document. They've not investigated that. They've not found out whether there's any truth in that whatsoever. They've just reported it as being fact. They've just reported it as being absolute fact. No investigation. And it's gone into a legal report. So that report then gets put in another report, and another report, and another report, and another report. And there you go. You officially did something that you never actually did, but it's in law now because it's an illegal document that you did that. And that's another awful part of the process, is that is what happens. That certain people, some statements can become can become a statement of fact, but no investigation is done. Nothing is offered. Nothing is investigated. They just accept that parent A did, parent B did whatever. And this is part of the problem. It is that process, and this is again something that should not happen at all. We are taught that you clearly state that it's something they said. I put everything in quotation marks. When I used to supervise contact quite a lot, and I would never just say something. I would put it in like mum said in quotation marks, not and they went fishing at the weekend, because I don't know if they went fishing at the weekend or not. So I had to put mum said they went fishing at the weekend. And that's exactly what they should be doing, but they're not. And so a statement that could have no truth whatsoever is labelled as being the truth and put in a legal document, which will then get put in another legal document and another one and presented to a judge as being fact. So this is the other difficulty, and this is what I would encourage you to challenge them on, is when you read your report, when you have that reporting going on, highlight it in your report and say, that didn't happen. Were you there? Were you there when this happened? So how can you report that this happened? And those are the sort of things. Yeah. Rather than parent A claims that Mr. Gibbons is abusive, it states, you are abusive. Exactly. There's no facts in that. There's no investigation. And these are the things for you to highlight and say. There's no fact in that. Were you there? Have you witnessed this? So why is that a statement of fact? Because they're not. They're not statements of fact. They are someone's opinion. Nothing more than someone's opinion. Unless they were there and they witnessed it, then it's a statement of opinion. And these are things that need to be challenged. Quickly move on to the next one, which is, and this happens again quite a lot, is people making a decision before they've reviewed all the evidence. And this happens 9 times out of 10, but you could get a CAFCAS officer who's already made the decision before they even walk through the door. They've already had a phone call with the other parent. They've decided 100% that that parent is legit and is telling the truth. And that's it. They come to you and they've already made their mind up. It shouldn't happen. Should never happen. Never, ever should happen. Innocent until proven guilty doesn't seem to apply in this environment. But it should do. And again, this is a bias that plays out. But you can... Now you know that that's something that goes on, which you'll know. You'll have felt it. You'll have felt that they didn't give you that. You can record those things. You can record how long they spent with you. Was it equal? Was equal time given? And I know it isn't. I know in a lot of cases that they don't even have conversations. I know in child in need meetings, they don't even include dad sometimes, or don't even include mum sometimes. They will just do the meeting without them because they've decided that they're the guilty party. But these are the things to challenge. These are the things for you to be going back and saying, this doesn't follow procedure. I have parental responsibility. I have every right to have my side of the story heard, and provide a statement. If they're not willing to listen, if they're not prepared to come do it, make a complaint, provide a statement. Just challenge everything. I know you do, Andrew. I know you're really on the ball with that. Framing, we've talked about, and we've talked about that one as well. Okay, so base rate neglect. So this is talking about what we discussed earlier, where you, in an assessment, you might present in a certain way, but that doesn't mean that's who you are. So it may be that it's the 6th time that you've had to be asked the same question. 6 times you've been accused of domestic abuse, and all 6 times, or all 5 previous times, police have found no further evidence. But yet again, you're having to answer, and no one's picking up on this. So when they come to ask you the questions, you're annoyed. you're angry, or you're sick of the parents saying that you're alienating them, when actually you're doing everything you can to communicate with them, to tell them what's going on. They're just ignoring you and blocking you, or just being a general pain in the backside. So when someone asks you about it, yeah, you can come across as being a little bit, that doesn't make you a nasty person or an aggressive person. You're just responding to the environment, you're responding to the situation. So that's why it's important that people see you more than once. I know this doesn't happen. I know this is theoretical, and I know this is what we're trying to change. But it would, if someone saw you multiple times throughout, saw you 4 or 5 times as part of the assessment process, they'd see that actually you're different. You do change. Some days you're good, some days you're bad. That's normal. That's normal behaviour. But they don't do that. 6 is far too low. Yeah, it is. But you know what I'm saying? We need to be seen more often. You need to be seeing people on a regular basis so you can see those natural ups and downs in people, as opposed to, oh, they were really, and writing it down, they were very aggressive in the interview. Again, I've read that in reports. And you think, well, you're asking them the same questions that they've had to answer God knows how many times. God knows how many times they've been accused of this, and they are having to answer this. So yeah, they're going to be annoyed, but they don't think like that. They don't collect the dots and see that. Okay, we've got about 7 minutes to go. So I'm going to open it up, and if there's anything you want to ask. I think one of the other things that were found as well is experts can sometimes be very helpful, but they can also be unhelpful, because if we kind of give too much weight to that, an expert's view is brilliant if they're an expert and they know what they're talking about. If they truly are an expert, then that can be great, but it can only be taken in context with the other information. So we need to, because what happens a lot of times is that one person's report is deemed to be the most important. All decisions will be made on that person's report. And it goes back to the earlier one, was we can't do that. We can't make that. We can't make, one person can't make the decision. We have to have all these different. Right, I'm going to read through your comments now. Yes, I understand that you would have lost it. 12 months of visits from them, absolutely. You get sick to death of the sight of them, and I'm sure then that they would report that you were uncooperative and verbally aggressive, when actually, yeah, you would be annoyed, wouldn't you? Kafka's officer phoned my solicitor to tell her I was mentally ill. Oh my word. Wow. I am not surprised, but I am gobsmacked in that wow, that's incredible that a Kafka's officer would make a diagnosis in that sense. Right. Well, I'm glad that your doctor was able to back you up. Now, Kafka's are really struggling. They are struggling massively. They're claiming they know what they're dealing with, and they don't. There's not one mention of personality disorders in their high conflict pathway. Not one. They say 12 weeks that they're going to work with the cases that are stuck. Let's face it, the cases that are stuck are going to be the ones that involve a narcissist. So 12 more weeks of those children living with a narcissist, being alienated from a loving parent. Those kids are too damaged. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. They do investigate for women. It's a quite it's a dangerous company. And do you know, the guardians, who are supposed to be completely independent, they often work for Kafka's or social services. How can that be independent? And I'm shocked, Suzanne, that she hadn't met you. How can you make a judgment about? But they do. They do that all the time, don't they? obviously, I've got a friend who's a Kafka's officer. I'm not going to massively lay into them because I know that they absolutely do want to do what's right. I know they do. They're a very good person. But they're not working within, they don't understand the framework of parental alienation. I'll be honest, if you've got a mum or a dad who are just, just that couple that always row, they've never got on, and dad's been bonking the lady next door, mum's really angry, and they go to court because they can't agree over the kids or anything. Kafka's sitting down with them and saying, look, we know that you're both frustrated, but you're not putting your kids' need first. Then those cases they might be able to deal with. Their high conflict pathway might be able to help them with those. But the ones that we know about, the ones that involve a narcissist, they have not got the foggiest. They've got no training on that. When I did my training, we did one module on mental health, and let's be honest, it was more about the legislation around mental health than actually about any conditions whatsoever. So they don't have specific mental health training, which I'm not saying they should have specific mental health training, but they certainly need to be aware that these things make a difference. Hold on, let me just go back up. The social service told me they weren't going to take things further as my daughter doesn't have additional needs. Okay. Okay, that's good then. And doctor, last week you were always on about the past, so I told her, please can you tell me if I'll ever see my daughter alive for a day, yes or no? Well, Carol, it's hard for your doctor to answer that because that's obviously that's something for you to, and he doesn't have a crystal ball. But you've got to keep hope. You have to keep hope that things will change. Wow. Top says that on one occasion I told them that I'd caught him returning home at 5:30 a.m. and he'd left the kids alone. She asked me what I was doing passing his street at that time and ignored the fact. Yeah. That does happen. It does happen that they because you told them that, it becomes problematic that you're the problem. Why are you stalking? But again, that might go back to the fact that he's told them that you're obsessive and that you're stalking. So when you say that you caught him not doing that, they were like, oh, well, she must be stalking him because she saw her at 5:30. Didn't think, hang on a minute, I'm about the kids. They get caught up in the adult. And this is the thing that is my biggest bugbear about it, is that social services, anyone who works with children and families, in every single serious case review that is done following the death or serious injury to a child, multi-agency working and not taking the word of the parents as being the truth, accepting that parents do lie and getting a full picture of what is going on. And yet we make this mistake time and time again, that they get blindsided. They have one hypothesis. They had one hypothesis and they just prove it. They just go along trying to prove that one theory. And if you're that hell-bent on proving a theory, you'll prove it. If you mentioned the flat earther, if he's so hell-bent on proving that there's a flat earth, he'll find some evidence. People will pick holes in it eventually, but he will find the evidence, because if you're that determined, you absolutely can. And this is what they do. They have that one opinion, and all they do is they do everything they can to prove it, rather than doing the things that we talked about, like the reframing or getting an impartial person to look at the evidence from a different angle. And it's why is it when I handed in my evidence, the court never even looked at it? Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me, because that should be their job. Their job should be to look at the evidence, look at how much, look at what you have, and that is their job, to look at those things. So I don't understand why they wouldn't. And this is what we're dealing with, isn't it? Is we're talking about, and this is why it becomes gender, is because this is so many systematic failings that you take it personal, and it seems that it's because you're a mum or because you're a dad, when actually it's just the system as a whole. And you can see Mel and Andrew and Top and Johnny, you're all having the same problem, and you're male and female. This isn't about your gender. This is about the system being wrong. That's what it's about. So we should unite. We shouldn't let gender come between us. We should unite. We should all be together saying the system is wrong, not saying it's wrong for mums or it's wrong for dads. It's wrong for all of you. It's wrong for everyone. No one's getting a good deal out of this. No one is getting a good deal out of this, except the narcissists on a lot of occasions. So that's what we're doing. We've got to unite against them. We've got to unite, regardless of our gender, regardless of our background, regardless of anything else, and just unite to fight this, to be aware that it isn't gender, it's the system and the natural biases that take place. It's about so much more than that. I'd love to know if it's sort of changed your thoughts a little bit. Yeah, and I agree with that, Andrew. I do think that you should report things. You should report. Even you don't need to press charges. You just have it on record, because that's what I did. I didn't want to press charges, but I wanted it on record, because one day you might have to use it. You hope that you don't, but one day you might have to. And yeah, parental alienation is devastating, and it's about time that we caught up, the professionals and society caught up with it, and that's what we're trying to do. That's I trained 6 people on Saturday, so they're all aware of narcissistic behaviours, and they're aware about parental alienation. So I'm trying. I know that's not many, but that's just 1 month. Next month I've got 2 courses planned, potentially 3. So that's more people trained. That's more people who understand this and who spot this. We are getting there. We're gonna, and we're talking today about training people to deliver this training as well. It is gonna grow. We are gonna raise awareness. We are gonna get it out there. No, it's very difficult to understand narcissistic behaviour unless you've experienced it. But you know what? A lot more people have experienced it than you would believe. In that group of 6 people, maybe they were attracted to the course because of that, but they all knew people. Even if they thought they didn't when they first came in, they all knew someone. They could all say, oh, actually, that sounds a lot like so-and-so. And so everyone knows a narcissist, so everyone can relate to it. Even if you haven't experienced it firsthand, you've seen their behaviours, you've seen the way they treat people. Yeah, it does, because they're very good at manipulating, but that's why we've got to be a force to be reckoned with. This is why we're gonna educate people so they know what a narcissist is, how they're manipulating them, how to avoid that. It's a huge nut to crack, and I'm not kidding myself that this is going to happen overnight, but it's bit by bit. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to call it a night, because it's a night. And I hope that you've found it useful. I hope it's been good for you. Hope it's been good for you to share. And obviously, if any of you need anything, you know where I am. Do get in touch. If you're new, you haven't seen this before, do subscribe to the channel. It does help me to reach more people. And I will see you next week at 8 o'clock for the live. No topic as yet. But let me know if there's anything in particular you want to talk about. That's what I'll talk about. You tell me what you want me to talk about, and I will do it. We will bring it up. So you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking your Sunday evening to spend with me. Speak to you soon, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.